Oh, whoops. Hold on. I'll go again. All right.
¿Vais acabando, por favor?
Could the photographers please finish their work? Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome. Good morning. The San Sebastian Film Festival is screening as a premiere in its official section outside the competition, the co-production between the United States, Germany, and France, Snowden, written and directed by Oliver Stone. I hope you can hear me. Who's here with us today? Along with the both leading actor and actress, Joseph Gordon-Levitt and Shailene Woodley. So let's start with the first question. Over here on your right, when we manage to get everybody to sit down and the microphone gets there. I hope you can all hear me. Yes? Good. Lovely. Hi. Hi. I would like to ask Mr. Stone, in which way, or I'm over here. I think she's saying over there on your left. On your left, over there. Well, in what way, I would like to ask Mr. Stone, how do you think this film may influence in the up-and-coming U.S. elections in a couple of months? What's the candidate, and who's the candidate who could probably solve Snowden's problem and perhaps make Snowden allowed to be in a public trial, and not whether it's the espionage, and not under the espionage law that's been passed? Who do you think can do that?
First of all, I'd just quickly say that the movie was planned and started 2 years ago, so it has nothing to do with U.S. election, and we had no intention of coming out in the middle of it, none at all. So there's no agenda here at all. Secondly, neither one has talked about the surveillance state, or much less Edward Snowden. They haven't addressed it. And neither of them in their past statements have indicated they would have any mercy on this case. And I think the best hope right now is the President Obama, who's in office and has a few more months to go. I think in his infinite sense of respect and mercy, he would grant a pardon, yes.
Hi, I'm Maisa from Brazil. Hi, I'm over here. Stone, why did you want to make Snowden a hero?
I didn't want to make him a hero.
He must have done very pretty things before he released.
Say again?
He must have done very dirty things before he released the material.
He must have done what?
First she said pretty, and then she said dirty, so I'm not sure what she said.
Sorry, dirty.
What kind of things?
Well,
You said dirty or pretty? I don't.
She said
well,
Okay.
I just wanted to know, because I've seen the movies, and I think he is treated as a hero, and I'm in doubt.
Well, that's just your judgment. I'm glad you feel that way. And the film was done again without that agenda. It was man telling the story flat out the way we interpreted it, my co-writer and I, and the two actors you see here. They interpreted it this way, but that's the way he saw it too, Mr. Stone, I think. And I think that's the closest we can get. We talked to everybody we could who would talk to us. I must say it is very difficult to find this information out. The NSA is not much talked about. The NSA is very secret, and only 3 people have talked about the NSA openly. Would be Mr. Binney, Bill Binney in 2000, 2001, and Tom Drake 2005 and 6, and now Mr. Snowden. 3 times since 1952 have revelations come out of that agency. You decide for yourself. You decide what he is. Some people can come out and feel differently. Reserve judgment.
Señor Stone,
Mr. Stone, your film makes us think a lot about control that we're all subjected to. And now we're warned that WhatsApp and Facebook have come together, that our documents, photos, intimate photos, and so on and so forth can be used. Do you think that privacy is endangered, or there does not exist anymore privacy anymore?
Mr. Snowden has said that privacy is one of the most important assets we have as human beings. It's our right, it's our privilege, and it's always been that since the beginning of our culture, going back to before Christ. Now, everything seems to be invadable. You want to add something to that, Joe, Shailene? Please do.
Well, you bring up Facebook and WhatsApp, and it's really true. There's definitely a culture nowadays where some folks like to share everything about their lives, and I think that's fine if that's your choice to use that as your mode of expression. Me personally, I prefer to share some things about my life and then keep other things private for my family, for myself. But again, I wouldn't say that either way is right or wrong as long as we have the choice.
I agree with that.
I just said.
siguiente pregunta, por favor.
Next question, please. Hi, good morning, egunon, as we say in the Basque Country. Welcome once again to San Sebastian, to this city. And the truth is, the film, above all, is a film of information, and it makes you really afraid because it provides information that they know exactly what we're doing in our day-to-day lives. We're being followed, it seems. But I've got a couple of questions. The first question is, is all the information in the film, or is there something that you kept back and edited out? And the second question is, have you chose Joseph Gordon-Levitt because he looks like the Mr. Snowden, or because he's a great actor? He's quality as an actor. Okay.
Is a great actor, good young actor.
Thank you.
And I think his career is ascending and ascending, and you'll see many other fine performances from him.
Thank you, sir.
And I have to say, I didn't know him, but I wanted him when I thought about the project. I thought of him first because he felt like him. He's also made some very good films, as well as directed a film called Don John, which I don't know if you've seen in Spain, but I thought it was a very special film.
Thank you, Oliver.
And as to your other question, all the information and the programs in the film are valid. They were told to us by Snowden, and very few people know about these programs in the film. The methods that are used in real life are not necessarily the ones we used in the film, because we could not do that. Mr. Snowden is still under indictment and would not reveal that information. But we paralleled it as closely as we could. We also brought out what the world didn't know before was this relationship he had with Lindsay Mills for 9 years. That was a very important relationship in his life, and kept him. I don't think he would have made the same decision unless he had known this woman. You understand this is a drama, not a documentary, and we have to keep it inside a 2-hour framework. Okay.
Hola, buenos días.
hi, good morning. I would like to ask Oliver Stone, how did you approach Snowden's character from his most intimate moments with Lindsay towards what we all know, towards everything that was revealed about his persona and about the character himself? And then a question, And along the line of what has just been mentioned, so all the big companies emerging vis-a-vis this issue, do you think that the law was made illegal, but do you think something has changed due to that, or are we still stuck in this same world of paranoia that we live in?
Your last question is, there have been reforms in the United States, some of them. They're somewhat minor reforms, but they have changed some things, and many people have admitted the effect of Mr. Snowden's on the reforms. He has played a role in reform. Another big thing that happened from the Snowden revelations is the embrace of encryption in the United States. Many companies, the major companies in computer world, not in the telephone world, have provided encryption to their customers, because if they don't, they fear that they're going to lose their customer base. As to his relationship with Lindsay, this was evolved, this was felt by us from Ed talking frankly to us over many meetings. I think I went 9 times to Moscow. And I met Lindsay twice, and Shailene met her for several hours and met her again, I think twice or once, twice, I think. So maybe she should tell you a little bit about it. What we felt was something was going very important between them that developed in those 9 years. You want to talk a bit about meeting her?
Yeah, I got to meet Lindsay 3 months after we commenced production, which was interesting to play a character that you had no relationship with prior to building that character, but because Oliver and Kieran Fitzgerald, who is the co-writer of the screenplay, had met Lindsay and had multiple conversations with Ed, it's easy to see this story back to what your point was earlier. I'm so sorry, I don't remember her name. But when she said, hero or traitor, it's easy to simplify it into one word or another, but this is a very complex story, and we forget that Edward Snowden is a human being on another journey, just like all of us. And I think what their relationship brings to this film is the ability to relate and empathize with his situation. And you don't have to agree with what he did or disagree with what he did, but we can all relate to relationship, we can all relate to partnership, and we can all relate to a deep love that raises the stakes of every decision in our life. And I think what Oliver and Kieran did with this film was exemplify what Ed and Lindsay's relationship was in real life, as well as give us as the public some context into the inner workings of Edward Snowden that we weren't aware of beforehand.
Hi. It's easy to imagine how the NSA is tracking everyone who has any kind of relationship with Snowden, and now you guys are part of that list. Congratulations on that. So how paranoid were you about this? Do you have the feeling while shooting that you were actively being watched? Do you have that feeling now?
I didn't, no. I felt like we were public and we were legal, we were a business. We stated our intentions. We kept our script offline as much as we could because, there would be a high price on hacking the script about the major hacker in the world. So we definitely took precautions. We encrypted what we needed to, and we had person-to-person meetings where it was necessary. We tried to stay off any means of interception. We had our phones checked in the United States, but our producer, Moritz Bormann, who's here today, decided it was in our interest to move to Germany to make the movie, so we went there, and to Munich, and we shot most of the film there and went to the United States for 2 weeks, once to the White House area in Washington, and once to Hawaii for the scenes in Hawaii, and then Hong Kong and Moscow for the close.
Hola, buenos días.
Hi. Hi, my question, a question for Oliver Stone, whether it's true. I'm under the impression that the film reflects a certain deception vis-a-vis the Obama administration, what it could have been or what it promised to be and what it's been in the end. And do you think that impression is correct? And for Joseph, whether when you prepared to a role, whether you talked to Snowden himself, and what were the conversations like, if you can reveal anything, that is to say? Voy a responder la pregunta que se me ha hecho a mí.
So Oliver and Kieran, his co-writer, went to Moscow, I think I've heard you say 9 times, and worked with Ed on the script. And I did come along on one of those trips to Moscow, and I spent about 4 hours sitting with Ed, as well as his longtime girlfriend, Lindsay, who Shailene plays in the movie. And the 3 of us spoke at length for a number of hours, and that was really valuable to me because you know, of course, I could learn about his politics by reading the interviews or watching the documentaries. And Ed himself is always trying to take the attention off of his personal life and put the attention on the issues that he raises. But of course, because I was going to play him in the movie, my focus was on him personally, and sitting face to face with him, I could observe those nuances, how he sits or stands or walks or talks, how he shakes your hand, how he eats his lunch. These little details were really valuable for me as I prepared to play him.
Mr. Stone, there was a question for you as regards that you didn't have your headphones on. It's a question of what do you think, let me repeat the question because you didn't have the headphones on. It's a question about Obama and whether he feels deceived. He feels deceived. This is the first question. He feels deceived. He thinks it's a deception that Obama hasn't done what he really promised. Do you think that's correct?
You see Mr. Obama on television in the 2008 first term. He says quite clearly what he said at the time, that transparency, we were going to get rid of this illegal wiretapping, and that's not the American way. And of course, he went the opposite way. Mr. Snowden and Lindsay were both hoping that he would change course. I thought so, and many people believe so. We had hope because he seemed like a man, he seems like a man of great integrity. However, 5 years later, Mr. Snowden did what he did because he knew that, to the contrary, Mr. Obama had doubled down on the Bush administration policies, doubled down. It's a much more severe state. He's gone after 8 whistleblowers with the Espionage Act. And he's created, frankly, by now, 2016, he's created the most massive global security state, surveillance state that has ever been seen or can be conceived, way beyond East Germany, Stasi, way beyond that.
Mr. Stone, hi. I think your film is a very nice drama thriller, nice entertainment, but I think you present Snowden like a perfect hero on riding a white horse, and this is too much because it's very controversial what Snowden has done and what is now. But just a simple comments. I'm not giving any kind of approval of this total control, and I understand in the States you have your heritage, because history is always heritage, of this pilgrim moral commitment, and or your constitution is focusing that. In Europe, the situation is different. Our democracies are connected with our history, Greek and Roman history. And my question is, due to the present situation about the jihad and the strategy of the jihad of involving normal people, using internet, Facebook, and everything of this, and this is in France, for instance, it's a tragedy, you know. What do you think about controlling this kind of message, this kind of strategy? Because this is the present situation, and capitalism is that about a personal enterprise. You have the possibility to vote and to put another situation. Not Venezuela, for instance, and you back to the Venezuela dictatorship, populist dictatorship, and so on. Thanks.
You call it a dictatorship. Mr. Chavez was elected, and there were 16 elections, and they were monitored internationally. So let's not start that argument again in Spain. I know where you stand on this. I've heard it before. As to his, you asked several questions. As to Mr. Snowden being a white knight, I was with him many hours. I never saw him he was polite. He was what he is. He seems transparent in that way. He doesn't seem to have any kind of, frankly, secret life that I know of, except what he does at night on the internet. That he exposes to the world. So I don't see any flaws and I would have obviously brought them up. I'm reporting what I saw. And I think Joe would say, from what he saw, the same thing. So you don't make up flaws for people. The flaw he had is perhaps that he was too frail to work in the military. That's certainly a flaw. You saw how, at times, antisocial he could be. He could not sometimes express himself. He couldn't even express his emotions to Lindsay at times. He wanted to say, I loved you, but he can't even say it until the very end of the movie. So those are flaws if you look at it. But don't invent flaws for the man that he doesn't have. As to your last point about the need to sacrifice our civil liberties in the name of terrorism, I've heard that many times before. And the Germans heard it in the 1930s. It was one of the first things the Nazis did in 1933. We're here to protect you. We have to protect you. We need your loyalty. I've heard that, and other people through life have heard this many times. It is the death knell of liberty, true liberty, and it's the beginning of authoritarianism and tyranny. It is a very dangerous thing, you say. Terrorism can be fought, and I totally agree. It is a horrible thing, but it is not the most dangerous thing that ever visited mankind. There has been great dangers throughout history, catastrophes beyond belief. So in the name of one thing, like terrorism, to change all the rules is, to me, not a marginal response. It is an extreme response. Let's beware of fascists and tyrants who take over our governments and tell us we are going to protect you. I don't want that kind of protection. And thank you. Thank you very much. But and the third point, and this is I don't want to get dragged into a long, on the issue of you're saying they're providing us security, you have to prove it. And they say that with the mass eavesdropping on everybody in the world, they can give us security. They haven't. 9/11, there are so many flaws in the state that we had there. They didn't do their job. The NSA was in charge of signals. They missed the signals that they had, by the way, but they didn't know what they had because they had too much. FBI really screwed up. CIA screwed up. So it didn't work on the Iraq war. They said there was weapons of mass destruction. This is intelligence again, our intelligence. It doesn't seem so intelligent to me. You know, they passed all these extreme laws. Beware of these extremities. That's all I got to say.
Next question, please.
Good morning.
Hi, good morning. Hi, good morning, Mr. Stone. Over here. Over there, I think. I think she's standing up. I would like to talk about the final sequence of the film, that there's a big applause of people listening to the discourse. Okay, there's a lot of people applauding in his final speech when he's in that scene at the end. That final scene, is it too optimistic? Because it seems that people are more and more using social media. We don't have this awareness that what can be done with all of the information that's contained on the internet. The mobilization of people, is that sufficient? And she's referring to that scene where he gives a speech and there are a lot of people watching. You remember that scene, okay?
Start somewhere. We got to start somewhere, making books, movies, journalists who do their job and truly investigate. That's all we can do. This is a very serious situation. Yes, they have control. They have total surveillance powers of the internet. Underwater cables, everyone is tapped. In space, 2,200 miles up, we have gigantic rockets the size of the Eiffel Tower, listening in on every corner of the globe. This is a very serious situation. But we must become aware of it, and this is what Snowden has done. There's also the issue of cyber warfare in this movie that's raised when Snowden is in Japan. He talks about what we were going to do to the Japanese if they ever turn on us or if they no longer are allies. We have malware planted all over Japan and in other countries. Mexico was mentioned, several other countries. It would be very interesting to further that investigation. Another film can be made about that situation. It's very dangerous, cyber warfare, because nobody knows how it starts. Nobody knows how it starts. It takes months and months to figure out this stuff, what the Stuxnet virus was. It took 7 months for a guy in the United States to solve the mystery of what the Stuxnet virus was. Do you know what that was? Anyone know? Raise your hand. Yeah, one person. It's a shame because that is really what you should be working on now. This is 2007. We go into Iran, the United States launches the Stuxnet virus along with Israel. They won't claim it. They would give it official denial, but it certainly is true that it happened, and it took this researcher 7 months to find it. Once he found it, he knows we launched it. And at the same time, you have to realize that cyber warfare is like atomic bombs. Other countries pick it up too, and other hackers too. Apparently hackers can do it. You don't have to be a state government. You can be an individual and you can hack into the Pentagon. We've seen that. And that's what's going on now. People don't know. They're making crazy accusations about what country did this and that, Korea, China, Russia. It's very dangerous, this accusation game.
Can I add something? Do you mind? I thought your question was interesting. Is this sufficient? And you referred to a round of applause at the end, which is what happens. You know, Snowden gives talks all over the world, and a lot of people are very receptive to what he says. And of course, you're right that today he remains very controversial, especially in the United States. And while a lot of people feel positively towards him, a lot of people do feel negatively towards him. But I also think that especially the younger people who are kids today, younger than Shailene and I and me, they're the ones who are going to grow up and be in charge of these systems and these machines. And I do feel optimistic when I talk to people that are younger than myself, because I think they feel a sincere emotional connection and identification with this technology that honestly those of us who didn't grow up with it can never feel the same way that people who did grow up with it do. You know, I got my first email address when I was in high school, so I'm kind of at the very beginning of it when I was a teenager. But people today who grow up who never knew changing channels on a television, they only ever known the internet. That's something that they, I think, care to defend the egalitarian nature and the potential of what it can be, and are sincerely concerned that it not become an instrument of the kind of authoritarianism that Oliver is talking about. So, you know, your question, is it sufficient? I mean, we'll have to wait and see, but I'm optimistic.
Yes, hello. I wanted to follow up on what Oliver Stone said about cyber warfare. Here I am. On cyber warfare and technology. I agree on every word you said. I was thinking, what does Ed Stone think about all that? How can we control all this technology that has really grown out of control? It's monstrous.
Yeah,
and then there's a second.
It's a very good question. The movie doesn't go there.
Yeah. Second question. I noticed there was Snowden's Russian lawyer who played a part in making the movie. I presume that implied a Russian angle to the whole story, a Russian angle, a non-American understanding of the whole situation. And I wonder if that was integrated into the movie, or how does the Russian players' understanding of the whole thing come into the movie, if it does or not?
The movie, as you saw, it presents the facts as we know them. He went to Russia. His passport was revoked in the air, and he was stranded there. The Russians, after 8 days, negotiated by his Russian lawyer, in part, gave him asylum because there was no other place he could go. He didn't have a passport, and he wasn't a Russian citizen. And the United States, by the way, did not have an extradition treaty with Russia. not because Russia didn't want one. Russia asked for one and was negotiating one because they have so many criminals hanging out in the West that stole Russian state property and have billions of dollars, much of it illegal. And Russia was pursuing those people. The United States would not sign that treaty. So all of a sudden, when this young man comes up in Russia, the United States demands him back. Not so. He didn't make a treaty. So that's one point that people do miss. Number two, Anatoly Kucherino was a lawyer, human rights lawyer in Russia, and he wrote a book, a fiction book about the case. Very interesting, totalitarianism, 1984 kind of book. A lawyer interrogates a dissident from America who's fled to Russia. There's no other country in the world that can give him protection at this point, and no other country would, and I find that very interesting. As a creature of the 1960s, I'm quite shocked, because I think when I was a young man in Europe, Europe was much more independent, and Switzerland and Sweden, Canada would have considered and probably would have given him asylum, Snowden. But your other question was about cyber warfare. Yeah, just quickly, the only way out of this mess, the only way, is the way we did it during the atomic bomb era. We need treaties. We need a treaty between Russia, China, Iran, and the other countries that are using it, and the United States. However, it seems to me, since the United States established dominance and was first in Cyber Command, we created the Cyber Command, that the United States does not want a treaty. That is an issue that is very important and goes very deep, but you'd have to get some people to help you investigate that.
Hola, es una pregunta.
Question for the actors and for Joseph. As you've spoken to Edward Snowden, and he had done Citizen4, that is to say, to tell the technical and political side of things, so what did he think about the film? Why did he want this film to be made? And to Shailene, also, how were you affected by working with Mr. Stone? Because professionally, it's a film that's going beyond, it's clearly political, in which you, to a certain extent, are taking a position there. How does that affected you, perhaps professionally? If you could say something about that.
Well, yeah, there's, you mentioned the documentary Citizen4, which is a wonderful movie. And there's been a lot of great journalism and informative work done on this story. I think our movie uniquely is less about delivering information in any kind of comprehensive way, and more about an emotional drama. And as far as, you asked how Mr. Snowden himself feels about having a movie made about himself, I'll be honest, he was embarrassed. He's a private person. He felt awkward about it. But clearly he cares less about his own personal comfort, and he cares more about stimulating a conversation, getting people to talk about these issues, about what the future of the internet is going to be, about how the government is going to relate to this kind of technology. This is what he cares about. Clearly, he risked his life to further that cause, and I think he's willing to put up with the embarrassment of having a movie made about himself in order to stimulate that conversation.
And you asked how this movie is affecting me professionally because of its political stance. To me, obviously, professionally, I got to work with one of the greatest directors of all time and one of my favorite actors who I've looked up to for a long time artistically. But even more than that, this is an event that, yes, we could say is a historical event, but it's happening in real time, and it's affecting all of us in this room. So for me, doing this as an artist was part of the equation, but having the honor of being a part of a film that is a dramatization of real events and is a cinematic, there's artistic licensory because it's a cinematic film, but it offers a narrative that none of us knew prior, that I certainly didn't know prior, and I knew quite a lot about the Edward Snowden story because I was fascinated by it, 2013. But it's offering us a perspective that mainstream media, that our government, that nobody talked about, which is the human side of Edward Snowden. So professionally, you know, I could talk about how that's affected me, but on a human level, just as a woman in this world, who depends on technology but knows very little about it, especially before working on this project, it's been an incredible experience, and every day I learn something new. And like what everyone has mentioned, you know, this is, I share Joe's point of view on being optimistic about the future, but the only way we're going to claim privacy as a human right again and not a privilege, which it is right now, and it's only a privilege, by the way, if we're aware that it's a privilege. And before Ed did what he did, most of us, myself included, were not even aware that it was a privilege. We just assumed we had it, even though it's been taken from us. You know, until the public educates ourselves and stops and moves away from the story of, is Ed a hero or is he a traitor? Do we agree with him? Do we not agree with him? It's not about that anymore. It's about how we feel our lives are being affected by the technology we use and how technology is now using us. And when the people stand together and start having these conversations, that's when we'll really, you know, especially in America, that's what democracy is about, is having those conversations. And so I just feel very grateful to be a part of something where we can include those conversations.
Siguiente pregunta, por favor.
Mr. Stone, hi, Gonzalo Tutao. I'm from Peru. I would like to know, we've seen how the Bush government was, and Obama's was looked as something hopeful, and the deception that it's caused. How do you see the political future in the US, the immediate future?
Talk to the two optimists here. Go ahead.
I'm not sure how to answer that optimistically. I pass.
Come on, Joe.
I second.
Yeah.
Well, look, I think, without being too dark about it, if Miss Clinton or whatever, Mr. Trump were to win, something is going to happen, and it's going to take us down on a rough, bumpy road. And that rough, bumpy road may lead to something positive, because the more adversity a country has sometimes, the more awake they become. And I think America needs to understand that they are pursuing a path abroad and internally that is leading to self-destruction.
Siguiente pregunta, por favor.
Yes, following question, please. Hi, good morning. I'd like to ask you, and coinciding with the premiere of the film, a couple of curious events have taken place. One is a report by the NSA and the CIA talking about the cruelty due to the information published by Mr. Snowden, and then a social and political movement asking for the pardon of the United States, pardoning Mr. Snowden. I would like to know your opinion, where that report involves trying to silence the film in the United States, or has it affected it, and whether it would be safe for Mr. Snowden to come back if the U.S. government were to pardon him. Thank you very much.
Well, the report by the committee is a repetition of the same kind of reportage they put out on Snowden. He has blood on his hands. He's responsible for the death of Americans, and he's hurt our intelligence agencies, et cetera, et cetera. But these are the very same agencies and congressmen who have voted for this state of surveillance in the first place. It's very difficult to get them to change their minds when they are defending a system that is insupportable. And the argument is never verified. They never tell you what he did, what Snowden actually did, and to hurt somebody. At one point, there was a talk about how mass surveillance works. They talked about 54 cases, and they talked about 30 cases, and then they got it down to one case where they actually mentioned somebody, and it was a taxi driver in America who was sending $8,500 on a wire transfer to al-Shabaab in Somalia. You know, they say blood on your hands all the time. They said it for years, way back in the 1960s. They're certainly missing the proof. You got to trust the American people. You can't just hide from them everything about your security state. And that's what they do. Mr. Snowden, if he come back to the United States, cannot have a trial, really. He'd be charged under the Espionage Act. He's not allowed to defend the public interest, which is his major defense. He can't even discuss the case, the things he did.
Tenemos tiempo para una última pregunta.
Time for one final question. Hi, good morning. I would like to ask you, Mr. Stone, you've put on the screen a hero of our days, but he's like a bit of a kamikaze, really, who ends up in Moscow. Every time one confronts administration in power, this happens. There are people, due to their work, we know that people are corrupt, we see, but people look the other way. They don't want to end up in Moscow, or even worse, they don't want to lose their jobs. What would you recommend, or what would you have done? And both actors, whether in your case of corruption and you had proof, would you be a kamikaze like this guy was, or would you turn the other way?
Individually, I certainly could not have done this at the age of 29. I was not that person. I did not have that consciousness. It took me many more years to discover more about the world. I would just add, before they speak, the kamikaze is not what he considered himself. He just simply made a decision in his life to do what he did and to leave Lindsay behind and not involve her in any way. He felt strongly that there was possibility to be killed or imprisoned for a long time, and he didn't have an exit plan, a very good one. He didn't really think about it. He was very happy to get the information to the journalists, very happy. In the movie, you see him delete the information. He made that point to them several times, that it's your responsibility now. Take it to the people, let the people decide if I was wrong or right. But the people haven't really been able to understand the degree, the complexity of the information or the sophistication of the American NSA and CIA.
For me personally, I've never risked my life for anything. I mean, I haven't, that's the truth. I'm different than, Oliver went and fought in Vietnam. I never went and fought anywhere. So I don't think it would really be right for me to say that I would or could. I never have. But I'm grateful that, that Snowden did.
Similarly to Joe, same thing. I've never risked my life for anything. It takes a great amount of courage, to put it lightly, what Ed did, but really an incredible amount of selflessness to do what he did. We use the word patriot in America often, and I think in many ways Ed is the greatest patriot for our country, because he believes in democracy, he believes in the people and our government so much, to the point that he was willing to put everything about his life, his livelihood, his love's livelihood on pause, to offer us an opportunity to look at our lives and how we may want to change things moving forward for future generations, to help empower the people so that we can participate in a functional democracy.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen.